And so Melbourne's fourth lockdown ends finally tomorrow night, kind of, after 2 weeks. But how could it not? I mean, today, just one new infection, again, of someone already in isolation as a close contact, which means there's been no community transmission now for about 3 days, and no deaths. Yet this city of more than 5 million people will still be living under tight controls, even after the end, so-called, of the lockdown. Melbournians still can't have anyone in their home, for instance, or travel into the country. Joining me from Melbourne is Sky News reporter Julia Bradley. Julia, thank you for your time. Can you run through some of the main restrictions that will still apply to Melburnians for the next week?
Well, Andrew, essentially there is more freedom for Melburnians and even more for those in regional Victoria. I'll talk you through some of those eased restrictions. So the travel limit for people in Melbourne increasing from 10 to 25 kilometres. Also, face masks are no longer going to be required outdoors, but they must be worn indoors. That public gathering limit as well, raising from 2 to 10. Students returning to face-to-face learning, which is a huge development, Andrew. Religious gatherings and funerals to 50, weddings to 10, and office capacity is increasing as well, and some relief for the hospitality industry. Today we learned that from tomorrow night, from 11:59 p.m, we will be able to return to seated service, but with a maximum of 100 people, 50 of those can be indoors. Now, for regional Victoria, Andrew, even more freedoms. 2 visitors to a household, public gatherings from 10 to 20, weddings, 20 people can attend those events, funerals to 75, and even greater relief for the hospitality industry as well. A maximum of 150 patrons allowed at restaurants and bars in regional areas. And as we know, for the last week as well, students have been returning to the classrooms. They've been enjoying face-to-face learning in regional Victoria.
Julia, can you just, sometimes I think they're just making some of this stuff up. So weddings, a maximum of what, 20, and funerals, 50. Can you explain the difference?
Yeah. Well, Andrew, so that's in regional Victoria, but I'll talk you through the discrepancy in Melbourne. So today we learned that for funerals, 50 people can attend funerals, but for weddings, just 10. And so I asked the Chief Health Officer about this today, and he said that essentially it's not a decision that was based on medical advice, but rather it was a decision that was made because it's harder to reschedule a funeral.
Is weddings particularly more risky? What's the medical advice?
No, look, they both have their risks, but you can't defer a funeral. They need to take place, and so we recognise that.
That's not a medical decision.
No, that's a recognition that the risk. The imperative of a wedding is not the same as it is for people who are needing to attend a funeral.
Honestly, Julia, I've got to say, I think you've been doing a brilliant job at these press conferences, trying to hold their feet to the fire. But I've got to ask you about another one where you popped up today. That must be getting sick of the sight of you. At least 15 of the more than 80 people in this outbreak, in fact, got infected with a strain of this virus that escaped from, not the Adelaide quarantine hotel, that was the other people. This one escaped from one of Victoria's quarantine hotels yet again. Now, you asked a very good question of the Chief Health Officer today, and I've got to tell you, his spin was crazy. Here you are, and here he is.
We still have the biggest issue of any state. Can you tell us why that is?
I don't know that we have the biggest issue of any state. As I said, we haven't had the most number of breaches from hotel quarantine.
With 1 in every 42 positive cases a breach.
Yep.
So that is the highest rate of any state.
There will be ongoing challenges with hotel quarantine. We just need to continue to investigate and improve as much as possible.
I mean, that's so dishonest, Julia, because the number of cases, of course, it's less in Victoria because they closed their quarantine hotels for more than 6 weeks because they were so hopeless, and they still take, what is it, a third or whatever of the number of travellers that, say, New South Wales gets. We are the worst per head of infection rate. Was there any admission today from this crowd that, whoops, maybe they got a few things wrong?
Well, Andrew, the government is certainly standing by its decision to impose this lockdown and also extend it by an additional week. We heard from the Chief Health Officer today, Professor Brett Sutton. He said that it's all based on medical advice, all of these decisions. And he also referenced this national decision to reach zero community transmission. He said that's something that Victoria's just implementing. And he says that this then allows our borders to stay open. So he says that all of it's necessary. No admission, Andrew, today that that was anything other than health advice.
We were a long way from just suppressing the curve, I tell you. And they keep saying, no, it's not an elimination strategy. But of course it is. It has been for ages. Julia Bradley, great job. Thank you very much for your time.